probably the best way I know to start in a study of the Beatitudes is just start. But we want to give it like an overview of what the Beatitudes are, the kind of the background. Jesus had basically just come on the scene, but his fame had already gone out. He'd been healing a lot of people, and I'm sorry about my hair. He'd been healing people. He'd been teaching in the synagogues, teaching the law and the prophets, reading from the book. You go to Luke chapter 4, and you find there he took the book of Isaiah, and he read from there. He'd been healing all manner of sicknesses, preaching the gospel of the kingdom. And so his fame had gone out the roof. And so he went up on a mountain and he began to teach. And the very beginning of his teachings is what we call the Beatitudes. Beatitudes is just a big word that comes from Latin or something like that. That is, this means blessings. And we'll look at that in a little bit. But as we go through this series, we'll touch on each one of the blessings. There's 8 of them, I believe. And that way the videos won't be that long. But I want to give you like an overview of what the Beatitudes are about. First thing I want you to notice, first go to Matthew chapter 5, starting in verse 3, and going all the way down to verse 11 or so, 10 or 11. 10, 11 kind of combines each other. But that gives you the Beatitudes. That gives you these blessings that the Lord begins to talk about. And he doesn't go to the Pharisees. He doesn't go to the elite. He doesn't go to the mainstream media, if you will. He just calls a bunch of folks together, and then from that, multitudes begin to follow him, and he just begins to preach. Those that are kind of downtrodden, I guess, because he went to those that needed healing and sicknesses and all that. And so he was getting people that were in need, and they all came to him. But I want you to notice 2 things about the Beatitudes, just an overall view of it. Starting in the first one, he begins, and I want you to notice the progression as it goes. He begins with blessed are the poor in spirit. And we'll look at that in depth a little bit, probably in the next video. But he starts with the poor in spirit, and it's a progression. And then he said, blessed are they that mourn, right? And then blessed are the meek. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Notice the build up, if you will, going from very poor and the sorrowful mourning, crying out because of your need, and then to the meekness of just depending on God, just realizing that God is in control, and then desiring to be filled with his righteousness. And he says, when you do that, you're filled. And then notice that as it goes from being poor, empty, without anything, going up to being filled. Imagine a cup, and you just pour water in it, and it gets all the way to the brim, all the way to the top. That's filled, isn't it? It's completely filled. It's not any lacking. It's completely filled. And then if you keep on pouring, what happens? It overflows. And that's what seems to happen here in these Beatitudes. It goes from the poor in spirit, goes to those that mourn, goes to the meek, goes to they that hunger and thirst after righteousness. And then look what it says in verse 7. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the merciful. You start out with nothing. You're poor in spirit. You start out with nothing, and then all of a sudden now you have mercy to give. It's overflowing. And it says, blessed are the pure in heart, those whose hearts are not defiled. And again, we'll look at each one of these individually. And then it goes into blessed are the peacemakers. I think we need more peacemakers. I'd like to spend a lot of time on the peacemaker part of it. But at least that we know that as children of God, as those that love the Lord, those that are Christians, we know that God has called us to be peacemakers, not ugly people, not contentious people, but we're to be peacemakers. Let's try to be peacemakers, y'all. And then he says, after all that, then you start getting persecuted, don't you? Isn't that what it says? Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. You notice a lot of times people aren't really persecuted, until you get, I guess, a little notoriety, a little fame. Jesus was getting some fame. Jesus was starting to get some people coming to him. And the Pharisees, the people that were the religious crowd at that day, they didn't like that at all. And it feels like my head is sideways. And pull my hair. There you go. I'll pull my hair back that way because it feels like. How about that? Is that better? So the Pharisees, the religious crowd, didn't like him because he was getting all the attention. And then they began to persecute him. Eventually, they crucified him. But we know that was all in God's plan. Overall view of the Beatitudes, it starts down here and it goes up, and you're filled with righteousness because you've hungered and thirsted after it. You desired it with everything in you. And then it begins to overflow, and begins to overflow into mercy and pureness and peaceableness. And we see that in the life of a Christian that submits himself to God, don't we? One other thing I want you to notice before we get off here, blessings. What does blessings mean? Or blessed. Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the mourn. They mourn. So forth. Blessed are those. It, very simply put, it just means happy, right? It means happy. I read somewhere, and it really, I guess, opened my understanding of it. It says to be in an enviable position. In other words, when you have something that is so precious, that is so valuable, that it's to be envied. And what we have, this blessings from God, and he goes through some of these things. This isn't given by any just man or person or government, anything like this. These blessings are given by God himself, the creator of all things, the most high. And to know that God has given you himself through Jesus Christ, is that not the most enviable position a person can ever be in their life? I think it pays to look at these Beatitudes, because understanding them helps us understand that we are in a most enviable position just simply because that we are being blessed by God. God has shown us his favor. Next time we'll look at the first one and then continue on and just try and make these as short as possible. God bless.